Dust and heat clung to everything like a second skin. The outpost had been quiet for 3 days, the kind of silence that gnawed at soldiers more than the sound of bullets. Sophia Torres adjusted her scope again, the Barrett M82's long barrel resting steady against the sandbag wall. Her helmet pressed tight against her brow, sweat running down her temple, but her eyes never wavered. She had spotted something 20 minutes ago on the far ridge, a shimmer, a reflection, maybe just heat distortion. Or maybe someone was watching them. "Torres, you seeing ghosts again?" Private Keegan muttered, crouched nearby with his M4 slung across his chest. He popped a stick of gum in his mouth and chewed like the desert wasn't suffocating them all. "Shut it," Sophia said, her voice calm, clipped. "You ever seen a ghost shine glass at you from 3 clicks out?" Keegan laughed and shook his head. "Maybe they're polishing their mirrors out there." Sophia ignored him. She wasn't here to win their approval. She was here to keep the base breathing. And still, it burned her, the way they all second-guessed her. Too many times she had caught the sideways looks, the muttered jokes about the sniper who never shot. She'd passed the training, the qualifications, even outscored half the guys, but a woman holding a Barrett still rubbed some the wrong way. Her radio crackled. "Outpost Delta, sitrep," came the voice of Captain Morales from command. "All quiet," Sergeant Harris answered before Sophia could. His gravel voice carried authority, though Sophia noticed he never once asked her opinion. Harris trusted his own instincts more than anyone else's. Sophia lowered her cheek back to the scope, breathing steady, heart slow. The shimmer was gone now. Maybe Keegan was right. Maybe it was nothing. But something in her gut twisted, an itch she couldn't scratch. She tracked her scope left, sweeping the barren landscape, the ridges, the gullies, the endless dust. And then she froze. Movement. Just for a second. A shadow against rock. She opened her mouth to call it, but the crack split the air before she could speak. The first mortar shell landed 50 yards inside the base. The world erupted. The ground shook, dust flying, alarms screaming. Shouts tore through the air as men scrambled for cover. Keegan dropped flat, cursing. Harris bellowed orders, dragging soldiers into defensive positions. Another mortar hit closer this time, throwing dirt and shrapnel across the sandbags. Sophia didn't flinch. Her scope was already locked on the ridge, and her heart hammered not from fear but focus. There, 2 men crouched behind a mortar tube, moving fast to reload. Her finger rested on the trigger. The rangefinder flashed in her scope, 2,996 meters. "Targets on the ridge," she barked louder than she meant. Harris whipped his head toward her, eyes wide. "No way you can see." Her shot cracked like thunder. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, but she absorbed it, exhaling slowly. 3 seconds later, one figure on the ridge jerked backward and crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. The other froze, staring in disbelief before scrambling to drag the tube away. The base had gone still for half a heartbeat. Even in the chaos, soldiers stared. Harris's mouth hung open. "Holy!" Keegan's curse cut off as another shell arced midair, launched blind. It detonated outside the walls with a hollow boom, spraying sand. Sophia chambered another round, locked back onto the ridge. The second man was running, zigzagging, panicked. She steadied, adjusted for wind, led the shot, then squeezed. Another crack echoed, and the figure toppled face first into the dust. Silence fell across the outpost. Only the ringing of the alarm and the settling hiss of sand remained. "Holy hell," someone whispered. It was Harris, staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Sophia rolled her shoulders, reloaded smoothly, and kept her scope scanning. "We're not clear yet. Watch the flanks." But no more mortars came. Whoever had been with them had cut and run. Sophia finally lifted her eye from the scope, her neck stiff. Around her, soldiers who had mocked her just hours earlier now stared with something else in their eyes, something between awe and unease. Keegan swallowed hard, gum frozen between his teeth. "Did she just—" "Almost 3,000 meters," Harris muttered, shaking his head. That's impossible." Sophia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just checked her weapon again, the steady calm in her voice at odds with the storm that had just passed. "Nothing's impossible if you're patient enough." Morales's voice came over the radio again, urgent now. "Delta report. You're taking fire?" Harris still looked stunned, so Sophia grabbed the mic herself. "Mortar team neutralized. 2 confirmed down. Base is secure for now." There was silence on the other end. Then Morales's voice came back, low, measured. "Copy that. Good work, sniper." Sophia set the mic down and leaned back, finally letting herself breathe. She could feel every eye on her, but she didn't meet them. She wasn't here for validation. She was here for survival. Hours later, after the chaos had settled and engineers had patched the outer walls, Harris called the squad together in the mess hall. Dust still clung to their boots, and the smell of burnt sand hung heavy in the air. Harris's voice was gruff, but his eyes kept darting towards Sophia. "That shot," he said finally, addressing the room but looking at her. "That wasn't luck. That was something else. Saved all our asses." A ripple of murmurs went through the squad. Some nodded. Others just looked unsettled. Keegan gave a low whistle. 3 clicks, man. I didn't think the Barrett even. It does, Sophia cut in, not sharply but enough. If you know what you're doing. For the first time since she'd joined this unit, the room fell quiet when she spoke. Harris cleared his throat. Command's gonna want details. And maybe more. He paused, scratching his jaw. That kind of shot doesn't go unnoticed. Sophia looked around at them all. These men who had doubted her, mocked her, dismissed her. She could see the shift happening in real time. Respect was a strange currency here. You didn't earn it with words, only with moments. And this had been a moment. But deep down she knew respect came with a price. Because now expectations would rise. Now she wouldn't just be a soldier with something to prove, she'd be the soldier who had already done the impossible. And in war the impossible always came with consequences. That night, sleep wouldn't come. She lay in her cot, the Barrett leaning against the wall within arm's reach, the desert wind howling faintly outside. Her mind replayed the shot over and over, not with pride but with weight. 2 men gone, faceless, distant, yet human. Her bullet had ended them. Her precision had drawn blood at nearly 3,000 meters. She told herself it was survival. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself she'd do it again if she had to. But war had a way of blurring necessity with something darker. When the alarm blared again at dawn, she was already awake, boots on, rifle in hand. And this time she knew, they weren't going to stop at mortars. The sirens wailed before the sun fully cleared the horizon, a shrill cry that jolted every soldier upright. The air smelled of sand, diesel, and fear. Dust rose in the distance, trucks maybe, or armored vehicles. Sophia Torres had already thrown on her vest, Barrett slung across her back, sidearm at her hip. She met Sergeant Harris in the corridor, boots pounding the cracked concrete. He was barking orders into his radio, jaw clenched tight. "North perimeter now. Everyone up. Move." "What's coming?" Sophia demanded. "Convoy," Harris snapped, breathless. 6, maybe 7 vehicles. Not locals. Heavy machine guns mounted. "They're not here to scare us, they're here to wipe us." Sophia's pulse surged. Mortars were one thing. A full convoy with mounted guns was another. The last attack had been testing the waters. This was the real wave. By the time they reached the north wall, the desert stretched wide and merciless before them. In the pale morning light, dust clouds moved fast across the ridgeline. Sophia's scope caught them first. Technicals, pickup trucks with .50 cal machine guns welded in the beds, men in headscarves braced against the wind. At least 30 fighters, maybe more. The base's defenses were thin. A skeleton crew, sandbag barricades, and 1 aging Humvee with a mounted gun. Not enough. Positions. Harris roared. Keegan sprinted to the wall, fumbling ammo into his M4. Other soldiers dropped behind sandbags, nerves showing in their movements. Sophia slid prone on the wall, Barrett settling into her shoulder. She slowed her breathing, the chaos behind her fading to background noise. Through her scope, the world narrowed. The first technical bouncing over rocks, dust spraying, gunner gripping the handle of a DSHK like it was a godsend. She exhaled, squeezed. The Barrett's crack thundered across the desert. Half a breath later, the gunner folded backward, body yanked out of sight. The truck swerved, slammed into a dune, wheels spinning uselessly. Cheers erupted behind her. Torres nailed him. Keegan shouted. "Eyes forward." Harris snapped. Sophia had already moved to the next target. The second truck swayed, charging straight for the perimeter. Her scope found the driver's face. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, trigger pulled, recoil slamming. The windshield burst in red mist. The truck veered hard, flipped sideways and rolled end over end, exploding in dust and flame. But for every vehicle she dropped, 2 more closed the distance. The enemy was shouting, firing wildly, bullets rattling against the wall. 1 round pinged off the sandbags inches from her arm. "Reloading," she barked, dropping a fresh magazine into the Barrett. Keegan leaned over the wall, spraying bursts. "They're pushing hard. We're not gonna hold this." Harris's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line. Command says no retreat, this base is ours. Sophia's jaw clenched. Orders were orders, but blind stubbornness could get them all killed. She returned to her scope, firing, reloading, firing again. Another truck burst into smoke. Another gunner toppled from his perch. But still they came, screaming, relentless. Then the Humvee roared to life, its mounted .50 cal spitting fire. The sound rattled Sophia's bones as bullets shredded through the advancing fighters, cutting them down like wheat. For a moment hope surged. Until a rocket-propelled grenade streaked across the desert. RPG, someone screamed. The Humvee vanished in a bloom of fire. Shrapnel rained down, chunks of burning metal clattering against the wall. The gunner's scream was cut short. The shockwave rattled Sophia's teeth. Smoke and fire swallowed their only heavy gun. Keegan's face went pale. We're screwed? Shut your mouth and shoot. Harris barked, firing his rifle furiously over the wall. Sophia's chest tightened. She swung her scope left. A squad of enemy fighters had broken off, flanking wide, moving low through a dry gully. If they reached the wall's weak point near the water tanks, they'd breach the base from inside. She grabbed the radio clip to her vest. Flank left. Gully near the tanks, 12 hostiles moving fast. Copy sniper. Cover them. Her Barrett roared, round after round pounding the gully. 2 men dropped instantly. The others scattered, diving for cover. Sophia cursed under her breath, adjusting. Too many too fast. A soldier near the tanks opened fire, but he was outnumbered. Bullets ripped past him. He screamed, hit in the leg, dragging himself behind the tanks as rounds tore metal and sprayed water into the air. Sophia ground her teeth. Not today, she muttered. She lined up, focused, squeezed. Another hostile fell. Adjust. Another. Her shoulder ached from recoil, but she pushed through. Still, 3 men slipped closer, scrambling over rocks. The wounded soldier raised his rifle weakly, but his rounds went wide. One enemy leveled his AK, ready to finish him. Sophia didn't breathe. Her shot cracked, and the man's head snapped back, body crumpling inches from his victim. The soldier by the tanks crawled further into cover, alive, for now. Snipers keeping us alive. Harris shouted, voice hoarse. But the line was bending. Fighters surged closer, throwing grenades, firing wildly. The air was thick with smoke and dust, the ground shaking with every blast. Sophia's magazine clicked empty. She reloaded fast, but as she did, a shadow rose over the wall. One of the enemy had climbed up, screaming, rifle raised. Keegan spun and fired point blank, 3 rounds dropping the man before he cleared the wall. He panted hard, eyes wide. They're climbing now. They're climbing the damn wall. Sophia jammed her fresh mag, dropped another enemy scaling the ridge. Her hands were steady, but her chest burned. For every one she killed, another seemed to appear. Harris shouted into his radio, desperation creeping into his voice. Command, this is Delta. We need air support. Immediate. Do you copy? Static. Then, negative. Air support unavailable. Hold your ground. God damn it. Harris slammed the radio against the wall, firing until his rifle clicked dry. He yanked another mag, sweat streaming down his face. We hold or we die here. Sophia's scope locked on another RPG gunner. She fired, the round cutting him down before he could launch. But her chest twisted. There were too many. Ammunition was running low. The wall was bleeding men. And still she could feel it, that pull in her gut. Something worse was coming. Through the smoke, she caught sight of another dust cloud. Larger. Slower. A heavier vehicle. Her scope adjusted, and her stomach dropped. A technical wasn't leading this wave. It was a stolen armored personnel carrier, steel plates welded thick, turret mounted with a PKM. It lumbered forward like a beast, shrugging off small arms fire. Sophia's breath went cold. The Barrett could pierce, but only if she hit just right. And she had maybe 3 rounds left in this mag. She steadied, exhaled, lined the scope on the narrow slit of the driver's viewport. Torres. Harris shouted. That thing hits the wall, we're finished. She tuned him out, fingers squeezing. The Barrett cracked, echoing. The round slammed against steel, sparking, but not penetrating. Shit, she hissed, chambering again. The vehicle kept coming, turret spitting death, bullets hammering the wall. Soldiers ducked, screaming, 2 dropping under the hail. Sophia steadied again, slower this time. When? Distance. Angle. She drew a breath, focused on the faint shimmer of glass inside the viewport slit. Crack. This time the shot punched through. The APC swerved hard, tires grinding, turret spraying wild. The The vehicle lost control, slammed sideways into a ditch and exploded in a rolling fireball. The blast shook the ground, a pillar of flame clawing at the sky. Fighters nearby were thrown to the sand. Screams cut through the smoke. The base went silent for one fragile second. Then the remaining hostiles broke. Panic spread through their ranks. They turned, sprinting for their trucks, dragging wounded, shouting in retreat. Sophia lowered the Barrett, chest heaving. Her arms trembled now, muscles burning from the recoil and strain. She could feel every heartbeat in her skull. The desert fell quiet except for the crackle of fire and the ragged breathing of soldiers. The wall was torn, sandbags shredded, smoke curling into the morning. Bodies lay scattered across the field, friend and foe alike. Harris stood slowly, rifle hanging at his side, disbelief etched deep in his face. He turned to Sophia. You just stopped a damn army." Sophia's lips pressed tight. Her eyes stayed on the smoke, the flame, the wreckage of men and machine. She didn't feel like a savior. She felt like a blade sharp and used. Keegan staggered beside her, adrenaline making him grin like a madman. 3,000 meters yesterday, APC today, you're like some kind of demon with that rifle. Sophia gave him a look that killed the smile. Demons don't have to bury what they kill. The words hung heavy. Even Harris didn't know what to say. Command's voice finally crackled back through the radio, shaken. "Delta, confirm, enemy repelled?" Harris grabbed the mic, glancing at Sophia. "Enemy scattered. Base still standing, thanks to one sniper." Static answered for a long moment. Then, "Hold position. Reinforcements en route. Expect counterattacks. Stay sharp." Harris set the mic down, sighing hard. He looked at Sophia again, eyes full of something like respect, and something else. Worry. Because respect came with expectation. And expectation came with pressure. Sophia sat back against the sandbags, hands trembling now that the fight was over. She stared at the Barrett, smoke still rising from its barrel. She'd save them all. She knew that. They knew that. But deep inside, a seed of dread took root. Because war didn't reward heroes. War chewed them up, raised their names high, then buried them twice as deep. And she had just painted a target on her own back. The smoke lingered long after the last shot faded. The desert was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was exhaustion, the kind that seeped into the bones of every soldier still standing. Bodies had been dragged from the wall, some covered in blood-stained tarps, others still breathing but broken. The wounded groaned as medics scrambled with dwindling supplies. Sophia Torres sat against the sandbags, Barrett across her lap, her hands raw from recoil and her shoulder bruised deep beneath her vest. She watched as Keegan tried to light a cigarette with trembling fingers, his face pale, sweat cutting trails through the dust on his cheeks. "Thought we were toast," he muttered, finally sparking the lighter. He pulled a drag so hard it made him cough. You're the only reason we're still breathing." Sophia didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the bodies lined along the ground. Friendly uniforms. Boys who had laughed at her, doubted her, but still died on the same wall. The radio crackled again. Harris bent over it, listening, jaw tight. When he straightened, his expression was unreadable. Reinforcements en route. ETA, 12 hours. Groans rose around them. 12 hours might as well have been 12 years. Everyone knew the enemy wasn't done. They'd pulled back to regroup to bring more. "Hold the line," Harris said flatly. "That's the order." Sophia's stomach tightened. Orders. Always orders. She looked down at her hands, stained with dust and gun oil, and wondered how much longer they could hold before orders turned into last rites. Night fell hard. The desert's heat bled away, replaced by biting cold. The base was lit by a mix of generator hum, firelight, and tension. Everyone moved like shadows, rebuilding sandbags, refilling magazines, checking weapons over and over just to keep their hands busy. Sophia found herself near the wreck of the Humvee, blackened metal twisted grotesque. She crouched, running her fingers over the scorched frame. She could still smell the gunner's blood in the air, faint but heavy. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to shake the image of his scream cut short by fire. "You all right?" Harris's voice cut through the dark. She opened her eyes, looked up at him. His face was weary, dirt-streaked, but sharp. "Fine," she lied. "Bullshit." He crouched beside her, keeping his rifle across his knees. For a moment he said nothing, just stared at the twisted wreck. Then, "You've done more in 2 days than most men here in months. Command's already talking about your shot. They'll want more from you." Sophia gave a bitter laugh. "More? What more do they want?" "Blood. I've already given them plenty." Harris didn't flinch. "That's war. You save us once, they'll expect you to do it again. You're a weapon now, Torres. Whether you like it or not. She turned her eyes back to the wreckage, the glow of dying flames dancing in her pupils. A weapon. That's how they saw her. Not a soldier. Not a person. Just a trigger pulled from 3,000 meters away. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind. Finally Harris stood. Get some rest. You'll need it. But rest never came. She lay in her cot, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as distant gunfire echoed from nowhere, phantom sounds that weren't real. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces, blurred, distant, then sharp. Men falling under her scope, bodies jerking in slow motion. She saw the APC erupting in flame, the screams swallowed in fire. Her stomach knotted until she sat upright, unable to bear the stillness. She pulled her boots on, slung the Barrett, and climbed the north wall again. The desert stretched out before her, vast and silent. But silence wasn't trust. Silence was the breath before the strike. She pressed her eye to the scope, scanning ridges, gullies, dunes. Nothing. Just shadow and sand. Still, her finger hovered near the trigger, her breathing slow, controlled. She stayed there for hours, the cold air biting her skin until her eyelids grew heavy. Then she saw it. A flicker. Movement. She snapped awake fully, scope tightening. A figure darted low across the ridge, almost invisible. Not alone, 2-3 foreshadows. Moving fast, deliberate. Scouts. Her chest tightened. They weren't waiting 12 hours. They were probing again under cover of dark. She keyed her radio. Contact. Ridge line for hostiles moving low. Likely advanced scouts. Over. Harris's voice came back, instantly awake. Copy. Do not engage unless you have to. We don't want to give away our strength. Sophia's finger trembled on the trigger. She could drop them easily, end it before they got closer. But Harris was right. Every bullet gave away a position, every crack of the Barrett a signal. She exhaled slow, keeping them in her sight, heart pounding. They crept closer, weapons slung, one pausing to signal the others. Her muscles screamed at her to fire. To stop them now. But she didn't. She let them move, let them vanish into the darkness. Her radio crackled. Still visual? Negative, she said, hating the word. Silence. Then Harris, we'll be ready. But she wasn't sure they would. The attack came just before dawn. The first blast ripped through the southern wall, a controlled detonation that shook the entire base. Soldiers scrambled, shouts breaking the dawn. Floodlights snapped on, cutting through smoke. Incoming. Harris bellowed, rallying men to the breach. Gunfire erupted, loud and chaotic. Sophia sprinted across the compound, Barrett heavy on her back. She vaulted sandbags, slid into position near the breach and dropped prone. What she saw froze her blood. The enemy had tunneled. Not just an assault, an infiltration. Shadows poured from beneath the wall, climbing from a blasted crawlspace. Dozens of them. Keegan fired wildly, screaming as they surged forward. Harris shot precise, cold, yelling for men to hold formation. The air filled with smoke, gunfire, screams. Sophia rolled the Barrett forward, scope catching the lead fighters. Her first round tore through two at once. She reloaded, fired again, cutting another down as he threw a grenade. The explosion rocked the wall, dirt showering them. Torres. Harris shouted over the chaos. Pick their leaders. Stop their push. She nodded, locking onto a man with a radio barking commands. One crack and his skull exploded. Another man seized the radio. Sophia's bullet cut him down too. But for each leader she dropped, another man filled the gap. The fighting was brutal, close. Enemy fighters breached the wall, blades flashing, rifles barking at near point-blank range. Keegan slammed one man back with his rifle but, screaming as he pulled the trigger into the man's chest. Sophia stayed behind the scope, her world narrowed to targets. Fire. Reload. Fire. Reload. The rhythm steadied her, even as chaos swallowed the base. Until her scope caught something that made her freeze. A child. Barely 15 maybe. Thin frame, oversized AK clutched in shaking hands, eyes wide with terror and rage. He scrambled through the breach, weapon jerking toward Harris's back. Sophia's breath caught. Her finger rested on the trigger. One shot and she saved Harris. One shot and she ended a boy. Her chest tightened, every nerve screaming. Time slowed, her vision tunneling. Torres. Harris shouted, oblivious, still firing. The boy raised the rifle. Sophia's shot cracked. The body fell. She froze, rifle trembling. The battlefield roared around her, but all she saw was the boy's face, eyes wide as if still alive. She swallowed hard, bow rising, forcing herself to reload, to fire again, to keep killing. Because stopping now meant everyone died. Minutes felt like hours. The enemy pushed, then faltered. Sophia cut down another leader, then another. Slowly, painfully, the tide shifted. The remaining fighters broke, dragging wounded back through the breach. The silence after was worse than the noise. The compound reeked of blood and smoke. Soldiers slumped against walls, gasping, trembling, alive but scarred. Harris staggered over, face streaked with soot, eyes wild. He clapped Sophia's shoulder hard. "You saved us again. Damn it, Torres, you saved us all." But Sophia didn't feel saved. She felt hollow. Her eyes lingered on the breach, where the boy's body still lay among the dead. Keegan followed her gaze, then looked away quickly, face pale. No one spoke of it. But everyone saw. That night, as they patched the breach and buried their dead, Sophia sat alone with the Barrett. Her hands shook as she cleaned it, oil and blood mixing on her fingers. She whispered under her breath, voice raw. "Weapon. That's all I am." The desert answered with silence. But deep down she knew, silence was only the breath before the storm. The reinforcements arrived at dusk, 12 hours too late to save the men already buried under sand and stone. The rumble of armored transports and the whine of helicopters announced their presence long before the first boots touched the ground. Dust stormed the compound as rotors churned the desert air. Sophia Torres stood at the north wall, Barrett slung across her chest, eyes hollow. She watched them roll in, columns of fresh soldiers, armored, clean, faces alert but untouched by the kind of fight Delta had endured. They looked at the wrecked perimeter, at the bodies dragged beyond the breach, at the blackened husk of the Humvee, and their expressions shifted. Pity. Disbelief. Captain Morales stepped down from the lead vehicle, boots crunching against gravel. He scanned the carnage with a jaw set like stone, then his gaze fell on Sophia. He walked straight toward her. "Sniper Torres," he said, voice firm but measured. "You're the reason this base is still here." Sophia met his eyes. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. "The reason it's still standing is because men died holding it. Not just me." Morales studied her for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. "Duly noted." But his eyes told a different story. They gleamed not with sympathy but calculation. Behind him, the reinforcements spread, taking over positions, patching walls, establishing order. To Delta's surviving soldiers, it should have been a relief. But the air carried something else, resentment, pride cut with grief. They'd fought, bled, and died to hold this place. Now outsiders walked in, fresh uniforms gleaming, ready to take credit for what Delta had paid for in blood. Harris gathered the survivors near the mess tent, faces gaunt and weary. "We've done our part," he told them quietly. "But command isn't going to leave it there. They're going to use what happened here." His eyes flicked toward Sophia, heavy with meaning. Keegan, bruised and bandaged, laughed bitterly. "Use her, you mean?" Sophia said nothing. She felt the truth in his words like a weight on her chest. Later, Morales called her into the command tent. She stepped inside to find maps spread across a table, radios buzzing, officers hunched over strategy. Morales stood at the center, pointing to marks on the map. "The insurgents have regrouped here," he said, tapping a ridge line 20 kilometers out. "Intel suggests they're planning another strike, larger this time. We're not waiting for them to hit us again. We're taking the fight to them." He turned, eyes locking on Sophia. "And you're going to lead it." Sophia stiffened. "Lead? You're our precision edge," Morales said flatly. "You've already done the impossible. We put you on overwatch, you cut their command apart before they know what hit them. Our forces move in, sweep up what's left. Clean, fast, decisive." The other officers nodded. To them it was simple math. A sniper who could shoot nearly 3 kilometers wasn't a soldier. They were artillery. Sophia swallowed hard. She wanted to protest, to tell them she wasn't a weapon to be aimed at their convenience. But Harris's words echoed in her head. "You're a weapon now, Torres. Whether you like it or not." She exhaled. "When do we move?" "Dawn," Morales said. "Briefing at 0500. That night, Sophia sat alone outside the tent, Barrett across her knees. The desert stretched silent around her, the stars cold and infinite. Keegan wandered over, a bandage on his arm, limping slightly. He dropped down beside her with a grunt. "So, they're sending us back into hell." She didn't answer. He lit another cigarette, inhaled deep. "You ever think about what happens after? Like when all this is over? If it's ever over?" Sophia's eyes stayed on the stars. After doesn't exist here. Only next. Keegan chuckled darkly. That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. But you're probably right. He took another drag, then glanced at her. They're making you into something you don't want to be. I can see it. But don't let them take you. All right. She looked at him, surprised. For all his sarcasm, Keegan's eyes carried something genuine, concern. She gave the faintest nod. At dawn, the strike team rolled out. Armored transports thundered across the sand, soldiers tense inside, weapons ready. Sophia rode in the lead vehicle, Barrett across her chest, the weight of expectation pressing harder than the steel walls around her. The desert blurred by, vast and empty, until the ridge line loomed on the horizon. Morales signaled the halt. Troops dismounted, moving with precision into cover. Sophia climbed the highest dune, prone with the Barrett, scope sweeping the enemy camp below. She saw them, dozens of fighters, tents clustered near vehicles, weapons stacked. More than the last attack. Twice as many, maybe. Through her scope, the world narrowed again. She spotted their commander, tall, broad-shouldered, barking orders near a truck. His men clustered around him. One shot could unravel the entire camp. Her finger rested on the trigger. But then she saw something else. Civilians. Women carrying water, children near the tents, thin and frightened. Not fighters. Families. Her stomach twisted. Morales hadn't said anything about civilians. Her radio crackled. Sniper, do you have eyes? Morales asked. Affirmative, she said slowly. Then take the shot. Drop the commander. That's the signal. Sophia's finger hovered on the trigger. Her scope stayed fixed on the commander's chest. But just in the edge of her sight, a boy darted past the tents, no older than 10, chasing a goat. Her chest tightened. Sniper, respond, Morales snapped. She exhaled. Time slowed. Her shot cracked. The commander fell, chest bursting red. Chaos erupted instantly, fighters shouting, scrambling for weapons, trucks roaring to life. Morales's troops surged forward, opening fire. The camp exploded in violence. Sophia stayed prone, scope sweeping. She dropped a gunner climbing into a mounted truck. Then another reaching for an RPG. She moved with precision, every round cutting down a threat. But no matter how clean her shots were, the civilians were caught in the crossfire. A tent burst into flame, screams tearing through the chaos. Women dragged children, crying, running through dust and bullets. Sophia's stomach churned. She wanted to stop, to scream at them to hold fire. But she kept pulling the trigger because stopping meant Morales's men would die. The battle raged for less than 20 minutes. When it ended, the camp was a ruin. Smoke curled into the sky, bodies scattered across sand. Morales walked through the wreckage, calm, satisfied. Textbook, he muttered. Exactly as planned. Sophia followed, Barrett heavy in her hands. She saw a woman kneeling in the dirt, clutching a boy's body, rocking back and forth in silent grief. Her throat closed. Morales didn't even look. Later, back at base, Morales assembled the officers. Delta Company is secure. Enemy leadership eliminated. This victory belongs to one person. His eyes turned to Sophia. Sniper Torres. Applause echoed. Cheers. Some even clapped her on the back. Sophia stood frozen, the sound hollow in her ears. Her mind replayed the boy's body in the woman's arms, her own bullet cracking through the commander's chest. The line between soldier and killer blurred with every cheer. That night, she sat alone on the wall again. Keegan found her there, silent. They're turning you into a legend, he said softly. I don't want to be a legend, she whispered. I just want to be human. The desert wind answered, cold and empty. And deep down, Sophia knew, war wouldn't let her. The first newspaper headline hit a week later. It wasn't supposed to happen. Delta's missions were classified, their operations buried under layers of military silence. But somehow, a journalist embedded with the reinforcements had caught wind of it. His article bled across screens and papers alike. They mocked her skills, until Sophia's 2,996-meter Barrett shot stunned the entire base. Sophia stared at the clippings on Morales's desk, her stomach twisting. The bold black words screamed a version of her life that felt alien. In the photo, her silhouette was framed against the desert, Barrett gleaming like some mythical sword. She looked less like a soldier and more like a weapon of legend. Good press, Morales said, tapping the paper with satisfaction. Recruitment numbers will spike. Congress loves this. They're calling you the best sniper the Army's ever had. Sophia's jaw clenched. You think this is good? You think this helps us? Morales gave a casual shrug. Helps morale. Helps funding. Helps America believe in heroes again. I'm not a hero, she said flatly. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation. That's not your call anymore. That's how they see you. And perception is as important as bullets in this war. She wanted to argue, to scream. But she bit it down because the truth was ugly. He was right. By evening, the soldiers on base looked at her differently. Some with admiration, some with envy, a few with suspicion. Whispers followed her wherever she went. That's her. The sniper. The ghost. Even Harris, who had always treated her like family, now seemed distant, his eyes shaded with something she couldn't read. Only Keegan was the same. When she sat alone in the mess tent, picking at her food, he slid into the seat across from her, dropping his tray with a clatter. Celebrity sniper, huh? He said around a mouthful of bread. Can I get your autograph before you become too famous to talk to me? She shot him a look sharp enough to cut. He raised his hands. Kidding. Relax. You look like you're about to kill me. Don't joke about it. His smirk faltered. He studied her for a moment, then lowered his voice. You're not sleeping, are you? Sophia's fork froze halfway to her mouth. I've seen it before, Keegan continued softly. Guys who can't close their eyes without hearing screams, without seeing what they did. You're carrying it like a rucksack full of bricks. Her throat tightened. It's not the shooting, she whispered. It's the ones I didn't mean to kill. The ones in the crossfire. The civilians. Keegan's face hardened. He reached across the table, tapping her hand. That blood isn't on you. It's on the people who put them there. On Morales. On the bastards who started this war. Don't shoulder all of it yourself. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to lay it down if only for a breath. But the weight clung to her merciless. The next mission came faster than anyone expected. Intel reported that insurgents were moving anti-aircraft systems through the desert, hidden in civilian convoys. If those weapons reached the mountains, helicopter routes would be cut, supplies strangled, casualties inevitable. Command's orders were blunt: stop the convoy. No exceptions. Morales laid out the plan in the operations tent, pointer stabbing at the map. Delta Company will set an ambush here, along the canyon road. Torres will be positioned high. Once the convoy enters the kill zone, she takes out the lead vehicle. That's the signal. No one leaves the canyon alive. Sophia's stomach nodded. You said they're hiding weapons in civilian convoys. That means? Yes, Morales cut in sharply. Collateral is expected. Don't hesitate. Harris shifted uncomfortably. Sir, with respect, that's a lot of non-combatants in the mix. We're supposed to minimize casualties. Morales's eyes turned icy. We minimize our casualties by ensuring those missiles never make it to the mountains. Do I make myself clear? The tent went silent. No one dared answer but Sophia. Crystal. That night as they prepped gear, Harris pulled her aside. Listen to me, Sophia. He's using you. Every time you pull that trigger you make him look like a genius. But there's a line and you know it. Her voice was flat. And if I don't fire, our guys die. Sometimes, Harris said, eyes fierce, living with yourself after matters more than living at all. She didn't respond. She couldn't. At dawn they deployed. The canyon yawned ahead, walls sheer, shadows deep. Delta moved into position, crouched behind rocks, rifles ready. Sophia climbed to a perch high above, Barrett steady on her bipod. The desert was silent, wind whispering through stone. Then, in the distance, engines. The convoy appeared, a line of battered trucks, dust plumes curling behind them. At first glance, they looked like ordinary supply vehicles. Families rode in the backs, scarves wrapped against sand. Children clutched to mothers. But then she saw it, through her scope, tucked under tarps in the rear trucks, the unmistakable outline of missile tubes. Her radio crackled. Morales's voice sharp. Target the lead vehicle. Fire when ready. Sophia's finger hovered on the trigger. Her scope swept across faces, men, women, children. Some looked exhausted, some afraid, some unaware of what they carried. Sniper fire. Morales barked. Her hands trembled. Her breath hitched. And then one of the trucks swerved, tarps sliding, revealing a fighter crouched with an RPG aimed skyward, straight at Sophia's position. Her instincts took over. Crack. The fighter's head snapped back, body collapsing. The Barrett thundered across the canyon. Chaos erupted. Fighters leapt from trucks, dragging rifles. Civilians screamed, scattering. Delta opened fire, bullets hammering the canyon walls. Sophia kept moving, her scope hunting threats, ignoring the wails of women dragging children. Every target she hit saved a soldier below, But each pull of the trigger burned deeper into her soul. The battle was swift, brutal. When the dust settled, the canyon was a graveyard. Vehicles smoking, bodies scattered, blood soaking into sand. Morales's voice came over the radio, satisfied. Objectives secured. Weapons destroyed. No survivors. Sophia lowered her rifle slowly, hands shaking. Her scope lingered on a girl no older than 12, crumpled against the canyon wall, her eyes open but empty. Her stomach lurched. She ripped off her headset, bile rising in her throat. She stumbled from the perch, boots slipping on rock, breath ragged. Keegan found her later, crouched behind a boulder, hands over her face. "Sophia," he said softly. "Hey, look at me." She did, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. "I killed them. I killed all of them." "You killed fighters," he said firmly. "And the rest," she whispered. "Don't tell me you didn't see them. Kids. Women. I pulled the trigger anyway." Keegan's voice cracked. "You didn't have a choice." She shook her head violently. "There's always a choice." For a long moment they sat in silence, the canyon echoing with ghosts. When they returned to base, Morales was already spinning the battle into triumph. "Sophia Torres once again has proven why this company stands unbeaten. One sniper saving dozens of lives, destroying enemy weapons. The Pentagon will want to hear this." Sophia stood at the edge of the crowd, face pale, eyes dark. The cheers rang hollow like hammers against her skull. That night, she dreamed of the girl in the canyon, eyes wide and empty. She woke drenched in sweat, gripping her Barrett like a lifeline. And she realized something terrifying. Morales wasn't just using her. He was building her into a myth. A myth that demanded blood. And the army? They weren't going to stop him. The army sent a film crew. They arrived 2 weeks after the canyon massacre, lugging cameras and lights as if war was a set and blood a backdrop. Morales welcomed them with open arms, his uniform pressed crisp, his boots polished. He smiled for the cameras like a politician shaking hands at a rally. Sophia wanted to disappear. She stood stiffly as the crew snapped photos, lens glittering. They made her pose with the Barrett, silhouetted against the desert sun. "Hold it like this," one of them said. "Turn your head slightly. Perfect, look fierce." She gritted her teeth. She wasn't fierce. She was exhausted. Haunted. The sand beneath her boots wasn't a stage, it was a grave. That night, Harris cornered Morales in the mess tent. His voice was low but sharp. "This isn't a circus, Captain. She's a soldier, not a damn mascot." Morales leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "She's both. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." Harris's fist tightened. "You're playing with fire." Morales smirked. "Good thing I know how to handle flames." Sophia overheard it all. She left before Harris noticed her, heart pounding. "They'll never let me be a soldier again," she thought. Only their legend. The missions kept coming. Each one bled into the next. Convoys, raids, ambushes. Morales always positioned her high, always demanding first blood. Every shot she took added fuel to the myth. The men started calling her the long shot, whispering that she could see through walls, that her bullets never missed. Some prayed before missions, asking for her trigger finger to stay steady. But when the shooting stopped, when the desert fell quiet, it was Sophia who carried the screams in her chest. She began to change. Her humor, once dry and sharp, vanished. Her eyes darkened. She stopped eating with the others, stopped speaking unless necessary. She cleaned her rifle obsessively, hands shaking if it wasn't perfect. Sleep came rarely. When it did, nightmares jolted her awake, sweat soaking her sheets. Keegan tried to reach her. One night, he sat beside her on the wall, the desert wind cold. He lit a cigarette, then offered it. She shook her head. "You're fading," he said quietly. Her voice was flat. "Maybe that's better." "No," he said sharply. "Not you. You're the only one in this place who still remembers we're human." Her throat tightened, but she didn't answer. A week later, Morales called her into his tent. He stood over a map, finger tapping an X marked deep in hostile territory. High-value target. Insurgent commander responsible for 3 attacks on supply lines. Intel says he's meeting with his lieutenants tomorrow night in a compound here. We take him out, the network collapses. Sophia studied the map. The compound was surrounded by houses. A village. Too many civilians, she said. Morales's jaw flexed. That's war. It's murder, she shot back. His eyes snapped up, hard as stone. Careful, Sergeant. You're treading close to insubordination. She didn't flinch. And you're treading close to butchery. The silence stretched taut. Finally Morales leaned in, voice cold. Listen carefully. You don't get to decide what's right or wrong. You follow orders. That's your job. Tomorrow night you'll take the shot. End of discussion. She left the tent, fury and fear warring in her chest. For the first time she thought of refusing. That night she found Harris alone by the vehicles, scribbling in his worn notebook. You ever disobey an order? She asked him suddenly. Harris looked up, surprised. Plenty. Sometimes orders are wrong. And what happens when you do? His face hardened. Depends. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes you get men killed. Sometimes you save them. The trick is living with yourself afterward. She nodded slowly. What if disobeying means saving civilians but risking your own? Harris sighed, closing the notebook. That's the war they don't put in manuals. You'll have to choose. The mission came. Delta moved under cover of darkness, the village glowing faint in the distance. Sophia climbed the ridge, Barrett steady, scope fixed on the compound. She saw him, the target, seated at a table with lieutenants. Men laughed, cigarettes glowing. Easy shot. But outside the compound, children played by a well. Women carried baskets. Old men sat by fires. The line blurred again. Her radio crackled. Morales's voice, target in sight. Take the shot. Sophia's finger hovered. Her chest tightened. She thought of the canyon. The girl's eyes. She lowered the rifle. Repeat, take the shot, Morales ordered sharper. She didn't move. Sniper, respond. Finally she whispered into the mic, negative. Too many civilians. The silence on the line was ice. Then Morales's voice, venomous, that's an order, Sergeant. Shot. Sophia exhaled. She switched her radio off. Below, Morales cursed, motioning for mortars. Shells launched, arcing into the night. Explosions ripped the compound apart, flames lighting the sky. Screams filled the village, people running in terror. Sophia watched in horror, stomach lurching. She wanted to stop it, to scream, but she was powerless. When it ended, the compound was rubble. Fighters dead. Civilians dead. The village burning. Back at base, Morales stormed into the barracks. He slammed Sophia against the wall, fury blazing in his eyes. You think you can defy me? You think you know better? She stared back, unflinching. I know murder when I see it. His fist tightened. For a moment she thought he'd hit her. But instead he shoved her hard, voice low. You're finished? You'll be court-martialed before sunrise. But sunrise came and no orders arrived. Instead, whispers spread. Soldiers murmured about what happened in the village, about the bodies, the flames. Some looked at Sophia with fear, others with respect. Morales avoided her, jaw tight, eyes cold. Keegan found her later, sitting by the wall, head in her hands. You did the right thing, he said softly. Her voice cracked. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? He put a hand on her shoulder. Because in this war, right and wrong don't mean winning. They mean surviving yourself. She looked at him, tears stinging. And if I can't? He held her gaze steady. Then I'll make sure you don't face it alone. The desert wind howled around them, carrying smoke, carrying ghosts. And for the first time, Sophia realized her greatest battle wasn't against the enemy, it was against the machine she served. Sophia knew something was wrong the moment she stepped onto the parade ground. The entire company was assembled, standing rigid in formation. The air felt heavy, expectant. Morales stood at the front, arms folded behind his back, jaw set like carved stone. His eyes burned into her as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Sergeant Sophia Torres, he barked. Front and center. The crowd's eyes followed her as she walked forward, Barrett slung across her back, heart pounding. She stopped in front of Morales, chin high, refusing to look down. Morales's voice carried, sharp and merciless. You disobeyed a direct order in combat. Because of your hesitation we lost operational control. Because of you the village burned. Civilians died. Soldiers died. You are a disgrace to this uniform. The words cut deep. But Sophia didn't flinch. No, she said, voice steady. You burned that village. You ordered mortars on civilians. You pulled the trigger as surely as if it were your hand on my rifle. Gasps rippled through the ranks. Morales's face darkened, a vein pulsing at his temple. Silence, he roared. But Sophia didn't stop. Her voice rose, strong, defiant. You think I'm your weapon? I'm not. I'm a soldier. And a soldier doesn't kill innocents just because you want another headline. The company stood frozen, caught between fear and awe. Morales's hand twitched toward his sidearm. For a heartbeat, Sophia thought he'd draw it. But then Harris stepped forward, placing himself between them. His voice was calm but carried steel. Enough. She's right. We all saw it. We all know it. Others shifted. A murmur spread. Keegan stepped out of formation, then another, then another. Soldiers moved, not toward Morales, but toward Sophia. Morales's eyes widened. His command was slipping. His control, his myth, unraveling. He spat the words like venom. You're finished, Torres. You'll rot in a cell for the rest of your life. Sophia met his gaze. Maybe. But at least I'll still have a soul. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then a helicopter thundered overhead, dust whipping the parade ground. A convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates. Out stepped men in suits, sunglasses glinting in the sun. The kind of men who didn't wear rank but carried more power than generals. The soldiers parted as the suits walked forward. Their leader, tall and composed, looked first at Morales, then at Sophia. Captain Morales, he said coolly. You're relieved of command, effective immediately. Morales blinked. On whose authority? On mine, the man said, flashing credentials too quick for anyone to read. Pentagon oversight. We've been watching. And what we see is messy. Unusable. He glanced at Sophia, eyes calculating. But her? She's not finished. Sophia's blood ran cold. What do you mean, not finished? The man smiled faintly. Heroes like you don't retire. They evolve. And you've just proven you're willing to disobey when the moral line's too thin. That makes you valuable. For special operations. Black programs. Missions no one else can touch. Morales's face twisted in rage. You can't just take her. The man's eyes slid back to him, flat as glass. Watch us. Two soldiers in plain gear moved forward, stripping Morales of his sidearm and rank insignia. He shouted, cursed, struggled, but no one moved to help him. Not one. Sophia stood frozen, every nerve screaming. You think I'll work for you? The man tilted his head. Work? No. Survive? Yes. You've already been branded. Your face is on every screen, every headline. There's no going back. But with us at least you'll have direction. She felt the weight of every eye on her. Harris steady and loyal. Keegan, his gaze pleading. The rest of Delta, silent, waiting to see what she'd choose. She wanted to say no. To walk away. To throw the Barrett into the sand and never touch it again. But deep down she knew the truth. She couldn't go back to who she was. The army had made sure of that. Morales had made sure of that. And the ghosts wouldn't let her rest. Her voice came out quiet, trembling, but certain. If I do this, it's on my terms. No more villages. No more children. I choose the line. Not you. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Fair enough. For now. He turned, motioning to his team. Pack her gear. Wheels up in 30. The soldiers began to move, efficient, clinical. Morales shouted curses until he was shoved into one of the SUVs, his voice swallowed by the closing doors. Sophia stood there, Barrett heavy in her hands, the world spinning too fast. Harris stepped close, gripping her shoulder. You don't owe them anything. Remember that. Keegan leaned in, voice low. Wherever they take you, don't lose yourself, Torres. Promise me. Her throat tightened. She wanted to promise. She wanted to believe she could. Instead she just whispered, I'll try. The helicopter's rotors thundered louder, sand whipping into her face. She climbed aboard, Barrett across her knees, heart hammering. As the ground dropped away, she looked down at Delta Company, her brothers, her only family, growing smaller and smaller beneath her. The desert stretched endless, vast, swallowing everything. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she saw the boy in the canyon, the girl by the well, the faces of every ghost she carried. When she opened them again, the horizon was ahead, dark and unknowable. And Sophia Torres, sniper, soldier, myth, was flying into it. Not as a hero. Not as a weapon. But as something caught forever between the two. The end.